Yeah, so we are going live now. Advisor to the Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs Indonesia, Mr. Somnendu Mohanty, Chief FinTech Officer, Monetary Authority of Singapore, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to the MOU signing ceremony between Blockchain Association Singapore, Asosiasi Blockchain Indonesia, Distributed Ledger Technology Association of the Philippines, Labuan IBFC, Thailand Digital Asset Operators Trade Association, and Blockchain Australia. This will be followed by two panel discussions on the topic of ASEAN blockchain, opportunities and challenges from the regulatory and industry perspective, respectively. Our special guests for this signing ceremony are Park Eddy, Mr. Somnendu, Ms. Farah Jafar Crosby, CEO of Labuan IBFC, Mr. Oham, Chairman of Asosiasi Blockchain Indonesia, me, Chia Hock Lai, Co-Chair for BS and the host and MC for today's event, Mr. Justo A. Ortiz, also known as Tito, Chairman for DLT Association of Philippines, Mr. Piradej Pit Tarampong, President, Thailand Digital Asset Operators Trade Association. Last but not least, Mr. Steve Wallace, CEO, Blockchain Australia. This MOU between the six parties seeks to foster and strengthen cross-border relationship with global blockchain organizations. But before we start, I would like to take a few moments to share with you our program for today. Later, I'll start off with a welcome address, followed by opening keynotes from Park Eddy and Mr. Somnendu Mohanty, after which we will witness the signing of the MOU between the six blockchain organizations. Subsequently, we will start the regulatory panel discussion on the topic of regulations, innovation versus consumer protection. Next, before we start the industry panel discussion on the topic of industry trends of blockchain in ASEAN, we will have a keynote speech by all the MOU signatories. Without further ado, let me start my welcome address. Before I start, perhaps I share with you how this MOU came about. I think a few months back, I recall that we had an outstanding partnership with the Indonesia Blockchain Association. And then one of our member, Alex from ABIT, mentioned that Thailand is in the process of setting up their blockchain association. And then I recall a few months, in fact, last year, I've been talking to the DLT Association Philippines on the possible MOU. There we have 4 ASEAN countries. So we start to ask, we need to have the 5th one from Malaysia. And I recall my friend, Ms. Farah from Labuan IBFC, whom I last met during my last overseas travel, in fact, in December 2019 in Thailand, Hainan Island. So she readily went to get the board approval to join in this MOU. And a few weeks back, I reconnected with my friend Caroline Baula who sits in the board of Blockchain Australia. And she connected me to Steve Wallace, the CEO of Blockchain Australia. So now we have ASEAN 5+1. So there's a saying that better late than never. But I would like to add, there's no better time than now. Why? Because now we are witnessing very positive macro trends in blockchain development. First and foremost, we are seeing increasing regulatory certainty and urgency in blockchain regulations. The Financial Action Task Force, the global body to regulate financial transaction on money laundering and terrorist financing, 2 years back in 2019, released their first guidance on virtual assets and virtual asset service providers. But recently, they released an updated consultation paper, making references to the latest development in decentralized finance and even non-fungible tokens. So we can see the regulators are now up to speed in regulating this exciting new sector. We are also seeing increasing institutional interest in the digital assets industry. Locally in Singapore, DBS Bank started offering crypto assets to their high net worth customers and institutional investors. Globally, we have MasterCard, Visa, PayPal, JP Morgan, Goldman, all offering various types of crypto asset services. Last but not least, we are also witnessing more and more large-scale blockchain implementations. The most common being in the trade finance sector, whereby we are seeing quite a number of consortium, whether is it Voltron, Contour, or WeTrade. Back in Singapore, at the national level, the Singapore government already start issuing educational certificates on blockchain. We also issued digitalized bills of lading using the blockchain platform called Trade Trust to facilitate cross-border trade. And more recently, we started issuing and verifying COVID-19 test results and vaccination certificates on blockchain called HealthCert. So really, this is no better time than have this collaboration. So I look forward to work with my collaboration partners to drive blockchain education, to share knowledge on the latest digital assets development, and to promote the adoption of blockchain solutions across ASEAN and Australia. Without further ado, I would like to next invite Park Eddie, the Senior Advisor to the Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs, to deliver his opening address. Park Eddie, please.
Thank you, Chia. It's very good afternoon for all participants here. And thank you for Pak Oham, my best friends. Dear colleagues, pandemic has caused disruption fundamentally. Before that, technology has also resulted disruption. So we are now facing twins disruption. It's time to restart. Most businesses shift their activities from offline to online, giving impact on change of jobs, mostly dominated by digital profession. On another side, the wave of uncertainty due to pandemic crisis haunts investment in conventional markets. So then all business strive not to decline into losses. In the midst of this situation, many people have started looking for crypto asset as investment alternative. However, not everyone feel comfortable when facing volatility and uncertainty to deal with the crypto assets. But in fact, it is difficult to avoid the uncontainable advancement of digital asset innovation, including blockchain. Government always aspires certainty in designing policy, public policy, especially with adapting to new technologies such as blockchain and crypto assets, because the government has to protect the public interest which underlies all this concern. While many parties actually perceive uncertainty as an opportunity to benefit by creating added economic value, even free from taxation. Hence, we need to a balance between both situations to avoid moral hazard in doing business. We concern that there are still lack of digital literacy, weak social protection, and difficulties in conducting supervision amid the proliferation of crypto assets, including blockchains. As the pandemic strikes, we all realize that connectivity plays an important key, both for simply communicating with colleagues and customers to keep activities on living. Unfortunately, not the entire manual activity that have been running for a long time could be suddenly shifted to digital. Yet this phenomenon urges the complexity of business, economic, healthcare, social services, and education has to shift to digital platform. We might bring blockchains to foster the shifts. In digital age, we even have to put our trust in building relationship with people who we only ever met virtually, like today. The situation is an opportunity for blockchains to build new design for more advanced and efficient connectivity. Even though it is not easy to transform trust as a digital product, we have to accept this as a new adaptation. The world is increasingly dependent on the internet, and blockchain is means of making new design for contactless business. There will be many advantages behind blockchain that we need to unveil for better livelihood. Currently, government and private institutions are aware and examining blockchain as a new opportunity, a new way of working, and a new hope for digital transformation. As well as in many regions, ASEAN Plus has to pursue an integrated data and information infrastructure development towards the implementation of electronic-based system. Finally, I really appreciate the ASEAN Blockchain Consortium collaborative efforts and hope that this collaboration can be an actual way forward to establish the blockchain adaptation into various business and social services while putting consumer protection as a priority. So have a nice discussion and keep healthy for all participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Adi. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Somnendu Mohanty, Chief FinTech Officer, Monetary Authority of Singapore, to deliver his opening address. Mr. Somnendu, please.
Hi, again, good afternoon to everybody, and it's good to see Hock Lai has not let his passion go away as he takes this new role of pursuing what I believe his skill set has been, getting people together for common good. And I think we all owe Hock Lai that he has managed to, with his unlimited energy, he's able to bring people together and drive quite a difficult topic like blockchain and build a common consensus around that. So Hock Lai, all power to you as you move forward to drive us together, especially among the ASEAN countries, on certain thing which is very fundamental in my mind. And let me set the context why I believe the DLT and blockchain becomes a critical component. I think it's unfair to look at that in isolation. We've got to look at that in a more, let's say, 10 years from now or 20 years from now. What are the 4 characteristics which will change almost 30 to 40% of global GDP? And that's a lot of GDP which will have a shift because of this 4 technology and 4 shift. First thing I would say that there is a greater force now to start creating visibility on the condition of many physical assets we have around us. And what I meant is the role of IoT devices. I think that's the first point of change, that at the end point of everything we do, there is a machine, there is a device which is capturing the state of that asset. And that technology will shift almost half of that $40–50 trillion GDP, the way we think about products and services. The second piece of technology shift would be the exit of static computer program and shifting to intelligent computing programs, what we call as AI. Because the amount of data, amount of processing need, and the progress in technology has created that opportunity for programs to start becoming more intelligent, self-learning. Hence, they will substitute a lot of human GDP with automated activity and output. Hence, that will impact a large portion of the GDP next 10–20 years. My estimate, and so the estimate around, it is half of the world's GDP. The third aspect which will switch is that the data demand, IoT devices, self-learning AI will create a need for a computing power. And that leads to the third technology which will make the big shift is quantum computing, because that opens up the possibility of able to crunch, process digital data and start building product and services which we don't have, which are not even imagined now. It may come in future as you speak, especially in healthcare industry, security, chemical industry. There's a huge impact of the quantum computing. And then comes the fourth one, for the reason why Hock Lai has brought all of us, is the technology is now tackling, which has been a problem for thousands of years, lack of transparency. And and the source of truth in the data on which we all conduct our transaction. That has been an issue for years and years. I think DLT is solving that problem now. That now we can technically believe the source of the data, the provenance of the data, the trust of the system. It brings a new definition to the need for transparency. And once you bring transparency, there are 4 sectors which dramatically changes: logistics, financial sector. While being a regulator here, that's a sector which needs more transparency. So financial sector, healthcare, and the government themselves. One moving mobility, health, money, and the society at large. They all need transparency, and blockchain is going to play a significant role in building this infrastructure, which will bring all of us together. So with that, this 4 stack, I think time is opportune time for ASEAN to come together and not only think about what can we do with this technology, but I think what Hock Lai we would like you to push is fundamentally we should have few things in place. Can we build a cross-network chain which allows us to start building some kind of an opportunity to build apps on top of it? Can there be a blockchain sandbox? Can we create and identify key sectorial opportunity and have use cases and start showing to people in the ASEAN region that if we come together, here are the 4 or 5 opportunities we have for ourselves. And thankfully, as some of you mentioned, I think Hock Lai was mentioning, during COVID-19, Singapore did the whole health certificate. Our university started issuing their degree certificate called Open Certs on the blockchain platform. We have heard Philippines also issued that treasury on the network. Banks are issuing bonds on the network. I think the road to production has moved on the blockchain. Now the time has come to connect the dots, build the standard, common policies, and move at a speed much before than what ASEAN typically tend to do. Well, ASEAN, there's a lot of discussion, a lot of talk, a lot of MOUs, but the real speed is questionable in terms of getting things out meaningfully. I think time has come for us to follow 3 principles. I want to end my speech saying that there are 3 things I want to ask the members here to look at. One is, how do we accelerate the concept of experimentation? Don't sit and write policy papers and discussion and do things. Do experiment, identify output, and do some real shift. Second, accelerate the process of commercialization. Policymakers should incentivize blockchain technologies to build product at a commercial scale. Last is drive adoption. Create the incentive to drive adoption for things which is built on the blockchain platforms that will create that real momentum for the shift we are talking. With that, I would end my short intervention and hand over back to you, Hock Lai.
Thank you, Somnendu. Next, we will start our MOU signing ceremony. May I invite the signatories, Ms. Farah, CEO, Labuan IBFC, Mr. Orham, Chairman, Indonesia Blockchain Association, Mr. Justo, Chairman, DLT Association of Philippines, Mr. Pitt, President, Thailand Digital Asset Operators Trade Association, and Mr. Steve Vallas. To have your iPad or smartphones ready. Next, may I invite our witness, Park Eddie and Mr. Somnendu. Just a reminder, keep your camera on. Once you have finished signing, just lift up.
Yes. I think Tito's, your image is getting behind you. You're vanishing from the act.
Yeah, you just put in front of your, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. It's good.
Yeah.
Done? Okay.
Yeah. Chia Hui, is it done? Chia Hui, have you finished the screenshot?
Can you lift up the screen again? Because like not all of you are lifting up.
Yeah. Okay, Steve and Pete. we need you to lift up your, yeah. Pete. Okay.
I think he's, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just for the
okay, Pete, can you just look at the screen? Yeah,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
look at the screen will do. Okay, thank you.
Then give me one
Chia
moment.
Hock, once done.
Okay, I will take now. Give me a moment. Just give me a moment.
You know, Tito, you have to get rid of your background image.
Yeah, okay, yeah. The screenshot is done. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Next, before we proceed to the next segment, right, I would like to invite the Vice Chair of Blockchain Association Singapore and the co-founder of DITOCO, Dr. Ernie Teo, to demonstrate the evidence of the signing on blockchain. Dr. Teo, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ernie, founder of DITOCO. So we are using the DITOCO platform today to do the digital signing of the MOU on blockchain. Right, so we have a verification platform as well, which is similar to a blockchain explorer, like most of you are used to. Instead of querying transaction hash, we are querying document hash now on this blockchain. So I have the signed document here, which I just received from the signing. Okay, and I will now verify it on our platform. And this is the evidence that we have retrieved from the ledger. And these are the signings that we have just captured as well. So our platform is a document signing platform similar to DocuSign, except we use blockchain to record the evidence. That allows us also not to store your documents. So basically, we don't store the MOU. The MOU is residing now with all the signers, and they can come anytime to our platform to verify the evidence trail. Right, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Teo. Ladies and gentlemen, next we will start the panel discussion on the topic of regulations, innovation versus consumer protection. Let me hand over to the moderator, Nizam Ismail, CEO and founder for Eticom Consultancy and the chair of the Digital Exchange of BAS. Nizam, over to you.
Thank you, Hock Lai. Actually, just a slight correction. I chair the Regulatory and Compliance Subcommittee of the Blockchain Association of Singapore. It's my privilege to moderate a session. You know, you don't often get one regulator in the room that you can engage, but today we've got 3 policymakers and regulators in this virtual room. So we're very privileged to be able to ask some hard questions, hopefully, just to provoke some discussion. So let's kick off. I think we don't have much time. My first question is to all 3 of you. And perhaps we'll start with the lady in the virtual room, Ms. Farah. But my question to all 3 of you is in one word, how would you describe your personal view of blockchain in one word? Ms. Farah?
Scary. Scary because it's unknown. So for regulators, I guess, and I'm a quasi-regulator because, you know, I'm a wholly owned subsidiary of the regulator. But for a regulator of people who belong, I guess, or used to belong in the legacy world, the idea of transparency, the way DLT offers it, the idea of uprooting systems, the way we're so accustomed to dealing with it, it's scary. It changes mindsets, it shifts goalposts. It really challenges us into a new place of being mentally and emotionally even, because you have to, you know, in order to embrace change, you have to let go of some fears. So it's not as simple as a normal OS, I guess. It's a philosophical change. It's a personal challenge, but it's phenomenal and it is exceptionally exciting. And we in Labuan are very excited to be part of this digital transformation of the financial services industry.
Wonderful. I like how you pivot from scary to wonderful. But Eddie, your thoughts, what is, in one word, please describe your personal view on blockchain.
Coordination. And my experience for 25 years in the government side, blockchain is a new coordinating model based on technology that should be widely used to business process redesign across function and sectors amid the dependence of information and internet. So then the government must place fitted policy space in which accommodating the use of technology and social protection. So that's why I think blockchain will be a solution for the government as well.
Wonderful, thank you. And you know, coordination is quite apt because we have both public and private sectors in this virtual room across different regions.
Yeah.
So,
it's easy to say, but it's very difficult to do.
Okay, and Subnendu, your thoughts in one word.
Okay, my one word would have been very strange, but it's a premium, lowering the premium of truth. That's my definition of DLT, because the world has grown on paying premium for truth, and DLT reduces that premium.
Okay, technically it's more than one word, but you're the regulator.
So if you want around one word is truth. I think truth.
Okay, that's fine. You know, having formerly been a regulator, I think one of the difficult tasks is how you really balance innovation on the one hand and protecting consumers on the other. And I think it's about recalibrating that point of balance, or you know, and rethinking where it is as we go along. My question to you, and this is for Farah, you know, do you think regulators need to take more regulatory risks when it comes to blockchain?
I'd like to take it a step. Well, let's move one step behind that, right? Before you can take more risks, you need to understand the creature. I think there has to be better understanding among legacy professionals, financial services, regulators, financial services players about what really DLT offers. What is the crux of it? I mean, you know, I might be a bit late in the game personally, but in the last couple of weeks, I've started to try to begin to understand NFTs. And the idea of an NFT is phenomenal, to take something, you know, that is as almost intangible as an IT and then package it. So, you know, I think we need to understand things better first before we can assess the risk. I think the problem is that it's an ever-changing goalpost. How do you understand something as completely as a regulator in order to regulate a certain ecosystem when the ecosystem is growing faster than your understanding? And I think that is the inherent fear. And I go back to my original answer, which is scary, right? So that is the inherent fear that we can never keep up maybe. But as long as there is a better understanding of what the processes and the systems are, how it works, you know, the proof of concept and all the rest of it, once there's a better understanding, then you have to go back to your risk appetite. Right? So what is a jurisdiction's risk appetite? What is the regulator's risk appetite with regards to this? And then, of course, and I know the other regulators may not be, I might not be too popular with the other regulators on the panel or quasi-regulators by saying that actually there is regulatory competition. There is jurisdictional competition. So then the question then becomes, first you understand the risk, then you assess your risk appetite, and then you look at the market and you decide, okay, you know, where do I want to be in this competition vis-a-vis other regulators, vis-a-vis other jurisdictions? So yeah, in principle, like everything else in life, it's easier said than done, but enhanced regulations may be a way of describing what may be needed, but actually it could be a better understanding of the risk, a better understanding of the mindset. And I've said this a lot of times before. I think it is the confluence of the mindset of the players, i.e. The practitioners coming from a very open source environment, clashing against the very protectionism kind of philosophical ethos that regulators have. And that is also another big challenge. So yes, regulators need possibly to take more risks, but even before that, they need to understand the nature of the beast.
So just a follow-on question from that. I think it's important that regulators understand the services, the offerings. My question to you now is, how would you think, how would the regulator then go on to understand the risk more fully?
And this is where trust comes about. right? So this is where engagement with industry, this is where we need to be able to trust the people developing the technology. We need to be able to understand that, you know, the aims are similar. And so when we come to the table, we come to the table with one mindset. This is why the coming together of the FATF and the blockchain, the digital blockchain associations towards, you know, improving VASPs and stuff like that, you know, initiatives like that are phenomenal, not because it regularizes, excuse me, the business, but it brings people together. And when people come together, there's a better understanding. And I think that is the bit that's most important. Confluence, trust, and a level playing field almost, you know? So it cannot be a situation where the regulator says, I'm going to regulate, you're going to listen to me. Personally, I feel that it has to be a coming together.
Thank you for that. Pak Eddie, turning to Indonesia, what is your sense on the priority that regulators there has in terms of regulatory development for Indonesia?
Yes, the priority of public literacy and rule of play. Blockchain development should ensure to provide benefits for many sectors, not only for financial sectors. I still remember 3 or 4 years ago, when there's a meeting with the senior official from Ministry of Finance, central banks, and then another ministries, they all refuse blockchains because they deal with the cryptocurrencies. And I only the one support for the blockchains because we want to know the technology. We understand the risk, but we understand the form of risk. We not always avoid the risk, but sometimes we can ensure the risk. So that's why then the homework is how to measure the risk and must be able to serve the emergent on complexity and increasingly diverse interaction of business and community. So it will further encourage change management and real work patterns, create consumer protection system, and regulate fair playing fields. But another issue is how blockchain can manage emerged data flow with trust. There is still no standard to deal with these issues because many countries also have an interest.
Thank you for that, Pak. Turning to Singapore, Subnendu, you've been in your own words, full of energy, tirelessly championing the cause of fintech and the blockchain over the last few years. Tremendous work. I want to focus on the issue of the regulatory sandbox. You mentioned in your address that you mooted the idea of a blockchain sandbox. In your experience, what has been some of the benefits and pitfalls of the sandbox regime, administered by the MES in Singapore?
Sure. Well, very good question, because I think the world of sandbox has been largely misunderstood. It's been very seductive narrative for many regulators to stay relevant. So they use sandbox as a way to express their progressive nature of embracing innovation. But the reality is that it is hard for regulators to front run their own desire to make a call on policy at a very early stage. So when Singapore built or designed their own sandbox right after UK announced, as Farah would say, a bit of a competition out there, but in reality, it was essentially a response to a market demand for regulators to do something about innovation. Okay, so at that point in time, in hindsight, it was just not a brainwave, but purely luck or serendipity, if you call that way. We came up with this bizarre idea to create two sandboxes, one a regulatory sandbox and one an industry sandbox, and practically had no idea what industry sandbox meant then. But in hindsight, it looks like a great decision we made, but it's purely luck. The regulatory sandbox was created purely for a filter mechanism. Let me explain that. If there is a bank and a fintech, a regulatory entity wants to do something and they believe there's a certain policy barrier which stops them doing that, those are the cases which were brought to the MAS sandbox. And we created a 4 filter. There should be a policy barrier to what you want to do. It should have a clear social benefit. Third, it should have a clear innovation agenda. And fourth, it is a real system. We didn't entertain test system, real system, real customer, and you should oblige to full regulatory expectation after you come out of the sandbox. Now, that 4 filter almost knocked out 80 to 90% of applicants. And out of the 80 to 90% applicants, almost 90% could not say what policy barrier existed for them to do that work. So it was largely a state of mind saying that regulators generally don't like, but I'll come to the real issue. The real issue was not there. So that was the limit of a sandbox learning for us. And eventually we landed with 8, 9 graduating over 3, 4 years. Out of the 8, 9, we graduated out of the MAS sandbox, largely were in the space of blockchain and digital asset area, which it clearly has I don't want to be saying because I work for MAS, but despite those strict filters, what came out of it, maybe little, is truly a distinct class of ideas and companies who are focused on future technology stack like blockchain and digital asset. So that's something I would say to stand as an evidence of the value of a regulatory sandbox. Now, let me give a quick 1 minute on the industry sandbox. The 80 to 90% who fell off that filter are not bad ideas, but they had one of the fear which somebody like Tito will always express. It's called tech risk issues, because there's a side of regulatory arm which looks at tech risk management guidelines, and many times it turns out to be very draconian, because you almost tell the bank how to use technology, which is a strange way with all the risk to be taken care. So those required a separate sandbox where they can experiment with the bank. Banks can get comfortable with the technology before they start deploying in their own system. And we created something called the API exchange or the industry sandbox. While the product is still evolving, but that was the industry sandbox which was created to facilitate non-policy barrier ideas to take to get into the financial sector. So that's, to me, are the 2 blocks of sandbox. Now, why did I mention the need for a sandbox in my opening remark? Because I personally believe sandbox has created one good thing. It has created the habit of doing more experiment, writing less paper. So most of us from traditional policymakers have grown up with the idea of writing paper, doing consultation, years and years of discussion before they make a policy choice. I think with technology, we can get rid of that. We can reduce the paperwork, do more experiments, build more evidence, and create a faster decision making.
Wonderful. That's good to hear that. Moving to Pak Eddie, we earlier touched upon the importance for regulators to understand the risks, and part of the process is about engagement of the private sector, the community. My question to you: do regulators actually listen to industry feedback? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is indeed important. The government shall open a room for discussion with the community. And we did meet License Asosiasi Blockchain Indonesia. The goal is to accommodate ideas and jointly design ecosystem, if necessary, develop supports as a new tech industry. In addition, the government should encourage a collaboration to speed up the implementation of 4.0 industrial revolution. With that being said, we invite the community to provide proposal accommodating needs and interests for development. The challenge is how to literate many new technical terms of blockchains for policymakers understand, give supports in terms of policy space, and sometimes it is not easy. You can imagine most of the policymakers is coming from the baby boomers, and then blockchain lawyer is coming from the Gen Z and millennials. And then we have to connect the language, right? It is not easy sometimes. So that's why I think we have to give like understandings. As long as they understand, and then they will support the new industries.
Thank you, Pak. Sorinda, I'm going to turn to you right now, and I think this is the hot burning issue that's probably a lot of the people in the participants in the room want to hear your thoughts about, and that's DeFi, NFTs, which maybe for not quite the right reasons have hit the news recently. Do you think there is value in, these emerging platforms or business models, and what are your thoughts as a regulator on these?
Well, you have been with I've been also with the regulation once part of your career. I think one of the things we all believe that any such ideas, when they start germinating, they're interesting, they create curiosity, and there'll be some anecdotal incident which will make them very popular. And the whole world, with the growth of social media and a highly networked world with mobile phone around us, our response to such romantic narrative becomes self-fulfilling, and we start believing that's the truth. But if you look at on the broader scale of thing, that little thing has happened. Somebody has sold a $65 million painting on NFT, and that seems to be the whole world is selling NFT. The reality is there are only few little thing has happened, but we are in an echo chamber now. Everybody's in an echo chamber. We are in a Zoom chamber. We are in a WhatsApp chamber. We are all feeding our own romantic ideas to ourselves and making it look like big in our head. So that's one thing. I think we should not go and regulate narrative which are echo chambers based on few incidents. But as you know, how regulators respond. The first response they have when they see the first sign of consumer protection issues. I think when these products will start causing consumer protection issues, you will see the first response from regulators saying that, you know what, time to look at consumer protection issues with this new ideas, new business model. Once this product hopefully or maybe becomes more real, and they deal with consumer protection issues logic in the right way, then comes the issue around are this product creating issues around money laundering, terrorism financing, and other issues which comes with any financial sector product. Then they deal with the ultimate risk of financial stability. So I think that process will kick off, but especially an NFT question, DeFi, we should let technology flourish, let the experiments happen. It's okay to have occasional romantic story around NFTs and DeFi, but let it move till it comes to a stage where we need to make a call how to protect consumers and the financial sector, broadly speaking, from any issues around stability or other regulatory consideration.
Thank you. So it's about separating the romantic notions from the hard data and the
evidence-based. We should be very evidence-based, not based on romantic stories.
Okay, I'll turn to our friend from Labuan, Farah. Your thoughts, and this is also on another development that has previously been spoken about, tokenized securities or digital securities. I think in the last 1 or 2 years, there's been a lot of talk about digital securities taking off and being a wonderful, use case for DLTs. Your thoughts? Do you think they have in fact taken off in the way that it should? If not, what's missing?
It's interesting. I never thought that I'd hear the word romantic in one of these webinars. I have to say so, Matthew, but yeah, you're right. It is a storm in a teacup. This painting has created so much buzz. With regards to tokenization, I think we've moved past the romantic stage and maybe a little bit more long-term relationship stage in that sense, maybe. Tokenization is in financial services, in box standard financial services, tokenization already happens, right? Because you look at a REIT, you look at a unit trust. The only difference is really, does it have a digital wrapper? Because the thing is that, okay, first and foremost, I need to caveat what I'm saying in the sense that Labuan does not recognize ICOs. Okay, we are very concerned about non-asset backed tokens. Because there is no way of verifying the IM. There's no way in really verifying the promoters and things like that. But when it comes to some asset-backed token, and STOs. We're very open to STOs because we feel that really it's in the thinking of what an STO is. If you look at a REIT, what you're doing is taking a big piece of a building and breaking it down to bite-sized, cake-sized pieces. And if a token does the same based on an asset, a recognized asset class, then all that's different is the digitalization of the wrapper. And really, this is our ethos. This is why we have legacy licenses that we allow to be used for digitalization. But we have very clear areas of allowance and non-allowance. So for example, an ICO would never be accepted in Labuan. An STO, on the other hand, would. And so this conversation that we had earlier in the week or last week about an NFT is about that value, the value of IP within the NFT and then tokenizing. So it's another layer after you have the NFT and the tokenization of the NFT. It's about commoditization of an asset class. So if you look at it from that perspective, then baby boomers such as Pa Eddie and myself, I won't add Sopendu because he's quite romantic into this. It makes it easier for us to understand what is what, you know. And so yes, we feel that tokenization is something that really is commoditization. That is how, as regulators, we try to understand it and commit to our language. But then it's very important for us to try and understand really the DLT wrapper that sits around it, because obviously the wrapper has the ability to disguise what's inside, right? So that is the bit of technology and understanding and that risk-taking, all those questions you asked us earlier. That is where it all comes about. The tokenization, in my humble opinion, is commoditization.
You know, Nizam, can I come in quickly?
Please do.
We got to segregate between things like NFT from tokenization. Tokenization to me is the next stage of dematerialization of asset. Because what we did many years back, we took physical asset, physical paper, dematerialized to electronic paper. Now we are fractionalizing the same paper for asset distribution.
Yes.
And to me, that's tokenization. I think regulatory response to that will be very clear and will be very, very swift, and it will encourage further tokenization because it is actually a progress of that state of asset. Well, NFT is more of a very futuristic way of valuing an asset, which is a digital asset, which I think my son and his son will perhaps value more, but that's the product to be seen. But tokenization is real. It is a real stage of shift from dematerialized asset to fractionalized asset.
Well, yes, I agree. But then, you know, when I look at my 10-year-old's Fortnite skin and he's got Adidas on it, then you have to question, you know, fungible tokens.
Yes.
You know, you have to think about that because our understanding of what's real and chewable isn't necessarily limited anymore.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. I think that's a perception of asset which has changed.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, great. I now want to shift the discussion to more an ASEAN focused thing because we've got different representatives of ASEAN. You know, traditionally, for a fintech firm or a blockchain firm operating in different states in ASEAN, the challenge has been meeting various regulatory requirements in jurisdictions with different legal traditions. So a lot can be said about enhancing efficiency. There are different rules on ownership restrictions or foreign ownership restrictions in different jurisdictions. And, you know, so we're not number one in terms of efficiency in the world. But the nature of fintech, the nature of the blockchain is that it doesn't recognize or it doesn't see borders. So there's an inherent ideological clash there. Maybe I'll start with Pa Eddie, your thoughts. Do you think it's time for ASEAN to look into some form of harmonization and, you know, address maybe something as basic as foreign ownership controls? Should there be a start?
Okay, yes, I think yes. In fact, digital transaction and e-commerce have no longer boundaries. We can also see from the global value chains practices that rely on production collaboration among corporations and countries. So then together we cater the global demands, not only domestic. And this is normally encourage business mobilization to areas that have more resources. If collaboration generates mutual benefits, cross-border business are always in demand. Foreign ownership, for example, are always welcome. Indonesia replaced the negative list with priority list of investment under job creation bill to 2020. And we also built Nongsa SEZ in Batam Island for digital park together with government of Singapore. So, however, we require transfer of technology. This is the big issues to avoid the widening gap. And then the next question is how to treat the cross-border systemic risks when shocks happen, not just romantic story. then cooperation is really important because understanding one to another is the key. Otherwise, we still talk with the different jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you for that part, Pak Eddie. So Menandu, you were almost critical of ASEAN in that, we are very good at, doing the rah-rah, writing papers, running events, setting visions, but less so at making things happen. When you look at the regulatory aspects of things, in the EU, they've got the passporting regime, and of course the EU has such a long tradition. But do you think that, given the cross-border nature of fintech, the blockchain, and the necessity for multiple licensing, do we think we should champion the idea of an ASEAN passporting regime, and perhaps that could facilitate more unicorns coming from ASEAN?
Well, I would not say. I would say that I sometimes believe that ASEAN collaboration is actually honest collaboration. People really want to connect. I truly believe. I think what really has stopped it to convert to a tangible, touchable thing is the ability to execute a very collaborative infrastructure or a process. Let's say as simple as a payment connectivity. We have been talking about payment connectivity from 2010, a single ASEAN payment connected system. Where are we? So it's not like we didn't have. It's not. I think we have been. The intent is strong. The desire is strong, but how to execute this is a big question. And what I'm going to reflect now, I think the fintechs have shown that the market has now the power to connect faster. That we have the technology maturity, we have the people in every country, whether it's Malaysia or Indonesia, you have tech talent in those countries who can come together and execute real, tangible, common ASEAN delivery, whether it is a payment connectivity, whether it's a single passporting systems or a data connecting systems, or you're going to connect on respective digital ID systems. All these are possible, real. And I personally believe, and I truly believe that the capacity and the talent today, thanks to fintech, thanks to tech, thanks to the ecosystem, which has grown organically, just out of sheer talent, domestic push, have come to a stage where we are ready to execute. I think now the policymakers can come back and sit on the table and say, here's what we want to do. Let's set up a team. Let's get countries put the best resource. I think we have got ability to do it now, much better than previously. So let me clarify. I think the intent was always honest and desire was there. It's just that ability to execute with the blockchains, with the computing capacity, with the growing adoption of a mobile phone as the endpoint device among the ASEAN population. This has become truly real, and we should capitalize this and make it happen.
I think you'll find tremendous support from the community if something like that were to happen.
Yes,
it's always been a challenge for startups, especially in this part of the world. Turning to you, Farah, do you think ASEAN can do more in perhaps setting common standards for certain aspects of fintech?
I think the market will force us to. I mean, I think, I would never have met Pak Eddie or Sopnindu if it wasn't for Hock Lai. I mean, just think about it, right? We are I'm a quasi-regulator, I'm not full regulator, but I'm in a room, in this virtual room with other regulators, and that's because of industry. I mean, I came from the capital markets before I started working for Labuan, and we have been looking at passporting for 25 years. But the players never forced us to the point where the industry, the DLT industry, the DFS industry is forcing regulators to look at themselves in the mirror. And I think in a way, what Sabnendu said earlier is true. We want a true partnership in ASEAN, like unlike other blocs. We are very real. As Asians, we are very real, you know, and we need the infrastructure. But it's the players that will help, that will feed us this infrastructure. You know, imagine a situation where licensees are recognized on a DLT, right? That is created in a JV between regulators and the industry. So I think, yes, definitely regulators need to start looking at creating standards. And I think as much as regulators want to create this standard, the real push will be from industry. It will demand it. And regulators have started to understand that this may be a force that we have to work with and try and understand. So yes, I think once we break down these barriers, once we understand what the benchmarks are, what the minimum standards are, the level of innovation will skyrocket, because everybody understands that there is a minimum that has to be met in order to be recognized and recognized as valid across all the regulators. So yeah, I think historically as legacy regulators, we have been able to maybe entertain the idea of wanting a standard, but at the same time being able to hide, you know, a friend of mine always says, don't hide behind your little finger. So, you know, maybe we've managed not to face the issues and say, okay, yes, we'll do this, but technology will not allow us to hide anymore. I think this is it has to be the way forward. Technology does not understand jurisdictional boundaries.
Agreed.
So in order to get on that train, we have to accept that jurisdictional boundaries are there for a reason. Client protection is essential. Having said that, there has to be a middle ground.
Okay, we really look forward to the day where regulators come together and, you know, work towards dismantling some of these barriers that currently exist. And I think it'll be for the betterment of the entire region.
I think Nizam, I think what Farah was saying, I want to repeat, that's very important, is what she said. The market forces today is far more connected and the momentum is so strong, they will make it work.
I believe so.
Yes, they'll make it work.
Completely, and it will be fantastic.
Yep, absolutely.
I think you'll find many believers to that in this virtual room. You know, I now want to turn to Pak Eddie. You earlier mentioned the importance of, you know, getting some very tangible benefits from the blockchain into the broader, you know, economy. My question to you is, from your experience in Indonesia, have you seen fintech? Have you seen the blockchain making very tangible, real-world impact on the broader economy?
Okay, based on data and experience, fintech sector in Indonesia shows strong growth potential. Now we have at least 322 companies officially recorded by authority. 15 are fast growing. Yeah, because we have a modality of demographic for fintech development. 274 million people, 84% below 54 years old. So I mean they deal with the technology. And fintechs also help financial inclusion, especially how to grow some sectors like corporate services, pension fund, communications, and another real sectors across islands, because we have very many islands that cannot reach by bank. But several studies also also show that a new and innovative business in fintech is disrupting in the final services. So that's why the government's proactive to deal with this. How then we have to collaborate the capacity of fintech with the conventional financial system, especially banking, to work together complementary between traditional banks and fintechs. And the other one is we also have another challenge, mostly fraud and debt collection misconduct. Finally, Financial Supervisory Board must work harder to solve these challenges. And we have to raise the public literacy, how to access fintechs, especially how to imply the KYC, for example. And another thing that we need to roll out a finance and accounting solution to help SMEs. So that's why I think if we can combine blockchain system under the financial system in the fintech, so we can also help this one. So at least we can work together with the accounting specialists to balance the books. Yeah. And then we can also work together with like taxation, whatever. So that's the fact.
Thank you. And maybe I think we're running out of time for the panel discussion. Maybe this question to each of you three panelists. In one word, please describe what you perceive to be the future of blockchain in your country. Just one word. Future of the blockchain.
For me, literacy.
Literacy.
Yes. No one always know about blockchain.
Wonderful. Farah, your one word?
Revolution. It will revolutionize everything. It's the fourth, fifth industrial revolution with quantum computing coming in as well. And the IoT, DLT is just the engineering piece of everything else. So it's a revolution.
And for me, it will be Internet 3.0. That's the next Internet. That's it. We have to shift to that next Internet 3.0. And DLT will be the backbone, IoT will be the delivery, quantum computing will be the power, AI will be the program. And combining all four will drive that. And I'm quite excited, especially ASEAN market. I'm super excited that ASEAN is perhaps one of the most vibrant region, very common culture in many sense with this technology, with the 500 million plus people, and AD who perhaps will hold the key to our success, given they are 25–30% of the population of ASEAN, will help us to build a truly a global common but ASEAN first opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the three fantastic panel members for your very incisive thoughts. I'm sure the audience, if they are here, you're here before live audience, you have a very rapturous applause. So thanks again. And it's been wonderful moderating the session, and I hand you back to Hock Lai.
Thank you, Nizam. Yeah, we have a very romantic discussion in the regulatory panel. Next, before we start our next industry panel discussion on the topic of industry trends of blockchain in ASEAN, let's invite the signatories again for their keynote speech. So we will be inviting Ms. Farah from Labuan IPFC. Farah, you can do your...
I can do my spiel now. No, I just want to thank the industry for bringing us all together. I mean, it's very rare actually to find a situation where the industry has managed to bring the regulators together in this virtual room, the players across the whole of ASEAN plus Australia as well. So all I'd like to say is congratulations to industry. Congratulations to everyone in the room. I'm really excited about the possibility of further educating ASEAN on the beauty of blockchain, the DLT, so that we can really fulfill the potential that this operating system will create for the region. So thank you once again for this opportunity, Hock Lai and everyone here. I look forward to further interactions and getting our hands dirty pushing the DLT agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Farah. Next we have Ms. Oham from Indonesia Blockchain Association.
Okay, thank you, Hock Lai. So first of all, I'm honored to be part of ASEAN 5+1 Blockchain Consortium. So as we all know, Indonesia has the highest digital rate adoption. So the only logical reason why we need to push this MOU is because ASEAN has a quite big market of, as mentioned before in the panel, of underserved and underbanked market. So it is a challenge that we need to tackle together, only together, in order to have the capacity to leapfrog, makes ASEAN the leader in the new era of blockchain and the upcoming revolution. I think that's all from me, Hock Lai.
Okay, thank you, Oham. Next, can we have Mr. Tito? Tito? Yep. You're on mute.
Okay, thank you and good afternoon to everyone. I mean, I'm really excited that we finally got around to signing this MOU among ASEAN +1 Blockchain and DLT Association. It's a great beginning for more cooperation and learning, regional connectivity, hopefully with the primary focus of commercializing use cases, not only in the digital asset space, but more importantly in the enterprise blockchain space, where I think that there are clear benefits in productivity, efficiency, effectiveness, by lowering, as Sopnendo mentioned, that premium on trust and substituting the middlemen that provide this trust protocol that's costing the economies a lot of money by one that is based on cryptography and code, right? So the transparency, the immutability, the smart contracts clearly are gonna make a great difference in terms of human progress, in terms of productivity and GDP. And I think the ASEAN plus our partners in Australia can be at the dynamic epicenter of this change. It requires us to change how we think, to change how we do things. We need to unlearn, learn, and relearn. But we have the talent, and most importantly, we have the opportunity to collaborate together, make a difference, and really contribute not only to our own communities, but to the global community at large. So it's really quite exciting, and thank you, Hock Lai, for putting us all together.
Thank you, Tito. Next, can we have Pete from the Thai Digital Assets Operators Association?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So the Thailand Digital Asset Operator Association was actually created less than a month ago to sort of discuss about, like, you know, how do we talk to regulators in a more unified manner, right? So actually, I'm super excited to be signing this MOU. I'm super excited to hear what issues others are facing, how they've dealt with it, and also learn what the regulators from other jurisdictions are doing as well. Yeah, I think there is a lot we can sort of share and learn from each other. And I hope to bring, I mean, I'm the president of the association, but I hope to bring others in the association more into the conversation as well. And also, I see today, actually, there's in the participants, there are regulators from Thailand, including the SEC and the Bank of Thailand as well. So in the future, I hope that there will be more opportunities for conversations across regulators and across different associations. Super excited about this. And thank you for putting this together.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Last but not least, can we have Steve from Blockchain Australia?
Thank you. I'm incredibly happy to be the +1 in this relationship. I thank you for the invitation to participate. My view at the moment has been it's something I think that's espoused by you, Hock Lai, and the way you do things. The connectivity of this ecosystem, it is the fundamental strength of any community. And personally, I've spoken literally to 2,000 people in 10 months when I took on this role, because I recognize the connective tissue that is the understanding of other people's context makes all of our lives much easier. And people talk to me often about the fact that you must get frustrated. And I said, I don't get frustrated. The reason I don't get frustrated is you must understand people's context. And if you don't understand their context, just telling them what they don't know or telling them what they should know without understanding the difficulties in which they face in trying to implement change is where things fall over. It's a patience that's required. But the more people we can get across, the easier that becomes. You know, there is strength in numbers, and importantly, the narrative that I'm driving at the local level, particularly with respect to regulators and broadly government services, is there's confidence that comes from understanding that we understand the implications of the things we're talking about. So it's the transfer of knowledge that is the key. So I think this initiative is a fantastic exercise to satisfy that requirement that says let's transfer knowledge locally, let's transfer knowledge within countries and within the region, and ultimately export that to the rest of the world and let them know that as a bloc, we understand what's important in different jurisdictions and that we seek to support each other in driving those initiatives forward. Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate.
Thank you, Steve. Ladies and gentlemen, next we will start the panel discussion on the topic of industry trends of blockchain in ASEAN. Let me hand over to the moderator, Orham, Chairman for Indonesia Blockchain Association.
Thank you, Hock Lai. So for the next 40 minutes, we are going to talk about the industry and how the trends is going. So present with me 5 very distinguished panelists. There's Alex, Hock Lai, Sir Tito, Pete, and also Steve. Hi, how are you guys?
Hey.
Hi, Orham.
Hi, Orham.
Hi. Hi. So my first question would be to all of you, but I want Alex to start. So can you please tell us a bit about yourselves for the participants here who are seeing you for the first time? Maybe they want to know what project that you're currently working on and how is it going. So please, Alex.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Alex Kim. I am a founder and CEO of Upbit APAC. Upbit is operating a regulated digital asset secondary market in Korea, Singapore, Thailand, and Indonesia. So in Korea, we are regulated under FSS. In Thailand, we are licensed as digital asset exchange and broker and cryptocurrency exchange and broker. In Indonesia, we are regulated under Bapepti as a physical asset crypto exchanger. In Singapore, we are under exempted status and we applied for a DPT service declare and we are waiting for MAS approval. We are under the review process. And since we are operating regulated digital asset exchange around ASEAN region, we are facing interesting challenges while we are doing business. And a lot of topics, we realized that we need collaboration in regional scale, especially around the travel rule, which is a sunrise issue for digital asset businesses to fight against the AML safety risk. So I really think that this initiative is the helping to shape this industry in the more matured manner. And I thank a lot the Hock Lai and other participants here for joining this initiative.
Wonderful. I see that you are dealing with a lot of regulators across ASEAN. So I'm going to move to Hock Lai. Can you please tell us a bit about yourself and how's it going?
Yeah.
Hock Lai.
Yeah, just a few weeks back, I stepped down as the founding president for the Singapore FinTech Association. So wearing my non-profit hat, I definitely now have more time to develop or contribute to the development of the blockchain ecosystem, not just in Singapore, but also regionally. Just yesterday, we actually collaborated with the Global FinTech Institute and Elliptics to roll out digital assets compliance training program, because I think that is very much needed, because for the digital assets industry to continue to grow, we will need a lot of specialist compliance professionals. Wearing my private sector hat, I'm providing advisory services to quite a number of blockchain startups. One is in the space of blockchain as a service. The other one is in the space of regulatory technology, and the more recent one is one that is doing supply chain financing in this. Looking forward to the panel discussion later. Thanks.
Thanks, wonderful, Hock Lai. So I'm moving on to Tito. Tito, please tell us about yourself and what project that you're currently working on.
Yeah, well, we're a universal bank. So we do all activities: commercial banking, investment banking, trust. But and I'm the vice chairman of Union Bank. I used to be chairman and CEO until 2017 when I retired. And we have several blockchain initiatives in the bank, most of which we carry out through a subsidiary that our regulator approved, that we set up. And I mean, I noticed Alex of Upbit, who gave a talk. We're in the governing council of the Clayton coin, which is sponsored by Kakao Bank. We're also a node validator, and we use Upbit to exchange our Clayton coins to fiat. So nice seeing you here, Alex. And this is all approved by a regulator. The other two pillars of the blockchain initiatives that we do, one obviously is in the virtual currency exchange space. Our central bank has issued, I think, 17 licenses. And we as a bank naturally have a license without getting any special license. We do VCE activities because we have Bitcoin ATMs and Ether ATMs that are approved by the regulator. And then the other business that we do is in, and we also have an investment in an exchange, PDAX, Philippine Digital Asset Exchange. But we also do enterprise blockchain. We have a financial supply chain that we work, which is on Hyperledger, IBM Hyperledger. We built a rural bank network, I2I. We have an investment in a logistic supply chain, Xlog. So basically, we have those three levels. We have our own stable coin that's been approved by the regulator. And we're trying to understand how we can sort of monetize that as a use case. So we have a lot of projects going on, and I think it's keeping us busy.
Okay. I have a follow-up question, but later on for you, Tito. It was nice to see how passionate you are with all of the projects that you are currently working on. So move over to Pete. Can you please tell us about yourself, Pete, and what project that you're currently working on in Thailand?
Right. I think my speech might be a bit shorter than other people. So my name is Pete. I am the CEO of Upbit Thailand, and we launched around 2 months ago. So we're one of the newest digital asset exchange in Thailand. And yeah, that's my main project right now. And today I am here on the behalf of the Association of Licensed Operators in Thailand, which comprise other exchanges, but also brokerages and dealers. Yeah, happy to be here.
Great to have you here also, Pete. So for the last one, Steve, our +1, can you please tell us about yourself and what project that you're currently working on?
Sure. I run Blockchain Australia. We're the peak industry body in Australia. The primary role that I seek to serve as a membership organisation is to elevate and advocate for the industry. That includes many participants who have got nothing to do with us and will probably never understand that we're trying to benefit them. It is a very broad sort of church approach that we have. We just recognise that we act almost as gatekeepers, recognising that some of the regulatory implications or some of the technology implications, some of the economic opportunities, many people won't see. So the exercise for us is making sure we keep people as informed as possible. Often in discrete verticals, I actively try to drive the startup ecosystem. It's a challenge for, I think, many ecosystems. The truth is that funding isn't adequate for all of the verticals that people seek to invest in. And the truth has been in Australia, in a blockchain DLT sense, the fact that there's been not depth of understanding with respect to it means that often it's in the too hard basket. So I'm encouraging local investment, but similarly trying to encourage inbound investment and saying that Australia has lots of opportunities for those, particularly those that are seeking participants who build on the application layer. On the government side, what's happened relatively recently, over about a year ago, the federal government has indicated that they're interested in the space, not primarily in a financial setting. They've chosen a safer route in supply chain, in reg tech, in cybersecurity and in credentials. So they're the stated first 4 use cases. So I'm helping build confidence with respect to those, and we're investigating what those opportunities look like for the country at the moment. And right now, I think I mentioned briefly before, in the middle of Blockchain Week, it's the first time an organisation like mine has done that. So the aim has been very much wide attention and appeal, and thankfully, it's been successful. So day 3, 1 more to go, and we've been in front of lots of organisations, from startups, from DeFi businesses, from true believers, from effectively maxis, to the other end of the spectrum, which is government, the Australian Securities Exchange, PayPal's of this world, the MasterCard. So it feels like I've managed to invite everyone to what has been a very interesting gathering. So that's the aim, bringing the community together, notwithstanding that the views sometimes don't necessarily align.
All right. Interesting that you mentioned about many blockchain opportunities are happening now in Australia. Now I'm gonna go to the follow-up question to you, Steve. What is the biggest demand right now? Because as people who are in the industry, we are being bombarded with news about blockchain every day. But for your perspective, what is the biggest demand in terms of blockchain opportunity right now, especially in your country, in Australia?
Probably 2 things I'd say. One is a resource requirement. One is a natural tendency Australia has. The resource requirement is formal education. The informal education has been problematic. Lots of people, I think, have sought to educate people informally. Right now, academic institutions, particularly tertiary institutions and vocational institutions, are scrambling to create education courses, micro-credentials, which can upskill people. So I think we've now hit that point where I'm having a lot of conversations with education institutions about what they need to do, because there is a desire and an appetite for that, for those learnings. And then in a very functional sense, Australia always struggles with respect to resourcing application developers and the like. And we need homegrown versions. So I think it aids those 2 purposes. The other thing, which is the opposite direction, is supply chain. Supply chain as an opportunity in Australia is always front of mind. We're far away from most countries. Australia likes to pride itself on its ability to export to the world. So in a digital-only world that we've been living in recent times, the breakdown of supply chains creates opportunities there. The ability to tell Australian stories, the fact that we're exporting so much, that is of interest as well. So it's often the case that supply chain leads the conversation. Unsurprisingly, that's where the government has started. So they're the 2 areas for me now: formalising of the education outcomes and leaning in on what is naturally a strength, which is supply chain and export and Australian stories.
Thank you, Steve. But as mentioned that you are very far away from the other countries in Australia, I want to know what is the case for Singapore, which is the hub for the Asian countries. So I'm going to ask the same question to Hock Lai. Do you see what's the biggest demand right now?
Thanks, Soham. By virtue that Singapore is one of the regional international financial center, definitely the digital assets space is one that is seeing tremendous growth. And by digital assets, we are not just referring to cryptocurrencies, but also security tokens. We are seeing a visible uptick in that, especially after we roll out the Payment Services Act in January 2020, which was last year. That provides a lot more visibility into this space, and we start to see a lot more institutional players coming into Singapore, setting up their base. So definitely the digital assets space is one area that has a lot more potential, which is why yesterday we decided to roll out a digital assets compliance training program. Hopefully that could help to position Singapore as a center of excellence for the compliance of digital assets. On the other hand, on the enterprise blockchain side, Singapore government has been taking the lead. 2-3 years back, we already started issuing educational certificate on blockchain, and then subsequently last 2 years we start issuing trade documents on blockchain on this trade trust platform. And more recently, we start issuing COVID-19 test results and vaccination certificate on blockchain under this health cert. And the good thing is that all these are open sourced, really true to the ethos of blockchain. All these are open source and you can easily Google and find out how to implement all this in your respective countries. And with that, we are also seeing visible interest by enterprises or even SMEs in the implementing blockchain. So it's not just restricted to the financial services sector. Manufacturing, healthcare is the obvious one, and I think the one that is more strategic to Singapore will be implementation of enterprise blockchain in maritime and shipping, because we are one of the key shipping hub in the region. So with all this, definitely that will then trigger demand for professionals in this space, not just the business executives, but also tech talent, including those blockchain developers. Thanks.
Thank you, Hock Lai. So I'm more concerned now towards how ASEAN is an archipelagic region, and I would like to address this issue to Tito. As I mentioned before, I'll come back to you. Based on your experience, Tito, what are the live use cases for blockchain in the Philippines, if there are any? Can you please share your thoughts and your experience to us?
I think, Tito, you are on mute.
Wait, I mentioned some of it in our intro, but there was a lot of regulatory discussion. So one of the things that we did is we issued retail treasury bonds of the Republic of the Philippines on the blockchain, but we maintained dual registers. So there was a register on the blockchain, and there was the normal register for these things. But clearly, what it allowed is for overseas Filipinos to buy in small ticket sizes on an app retail treasury bonds, which ordinarily would be distributed through the usual investment banking and banking channels, right? So that was one way of dealing with the regulator in terms of getting an approval, right? Which is, okay, let's do it both ways and see how it works. But we're doing a lot of things in the Philippines on the virtual currency side. Like I said, there are about 17 or 18 licenses that have been issued. One of the biggest one is Coins.ph, which was just bought out by Gojek in Indonesia. But I really want to focus on enterprise blockchain, because as a bank, that's what's interesting to us. So we have like 3 projects, the main one being financial supply chain. which is on, as I said, IBM Hyperledger. And what this allows is for a principal manufacturer, let's say a Unilever or a Procter & Gamble, to be able to see their invoices down the distribution chain all the way to the last mile, which is the village store. That's on the distribution side. When otherwise, they can only see up to the first either exclusive distributor or multi-product distributor. And on the supply chain, the same thing. Now, for them, it allows them to create more sales because they can see stock outs further down the supply chain. But more importantly, for them and us, is it allows us to see the data and make alternative credit scoring systems based on the invoices, the payment history, the behavior of different distributors and dealers down the line, many of whom become SMEs, and actually finance them. So instead of the manufacturing doing the financing, 90 days credit, the bank steps in, and that gives them a lot of saves on the working capital side, and for us, allows us to finance SMEs, which we ordinarily would not be able to do. So I thought that's a very interesting use case. And as I mentioned, we just invested in a logistics supply chain platform on the blockchain, which we will connect to FSC. So now not only do we see the movement of the documents and the payment, we will also see the actual physical movement of the goods and track it from the raw material inputs on the supply chain to the end product as it leaves the manufacturer and goes down through the distribution chain, not only locally, but even foreign or exports. So that I thought is very, that's one major use case that's very applicable to us as a bank and benefits our customer base. The other one is I2I. You were talking about archipelagic. So what we did is we have rural banks, what we call rural banks. These are banks in small towns with maybe 2 or 3 branches on the average. We connected all of them through the blockchain, and so that even though they don't know each other or they don't, they're separate legal entities, they can behave as if they're one collective branch network. So a rural bank in a small town with 2 or 3 branches now has use of over 1,000 branches throughout the archipelago. And the medium of exchange is what I mentioned earlier, is a stable coin that the central bank approved that we issue. It's called PHX. And that's the medium of exchange in that particular network. Now that became very, very useful in the pandemic because of the government payments, what they call social amelioration payments to beneficiaries, that they were able to pass through the rural banks and go directly to the beneficiaries in the town in real time. And I think that that became a very major use case, aside from the normal fund transfer use cases. So far, that's the main activity there. We're planning to build up a subscriber service of banking as banking in a box, which these rural banks can adapt. And you might be wondering, oh, how can a rural bank know blockchain? How can they connect, right? So we worked with a New York firm called Kaleido, which is part of the Consensus network, and they were able to create blockchain as a subscriber service. So with an iPad, in 5 minutes, the rural bank, or for that matter, a village store, can connect to this network, this blockchain, with a few steps on an iPad. So they don't need to know how it works. it just works in terms of the data that they need to be able to do their banking transactions. So I think these are like two major enterprise blockchain use cases that are outside the usual NFT and cryptocurrency world, which is right now taking a lot of our, attention. But these ones are real cases. They save a lot of money. They add a lot of value to the participants, and it's a real game changer. So we're excited about this. The challenge, I think it has been mentioned, is how to onboard these small players into the financial supply chain network, right? So that's the challenge, because they need to be onboarded into the network and be able to operate this system, because unlike the rural banks, we didn't have a mirror system to make it easy. And we put up a blockchain institute. We train people. We're now working with the universities. I think we've graduated about 800 people from that blockchain institute. We can't hire all of them, obviously, but we do hire some of them to do some of these use cases and the onboarding that we need to help our customers onboard into these platforms that we've built. And many of them go out into the economy and find jobs, because with COVID and clearly the digital transformation narrative for corporations has become more important than it used to be. And we're beginning to see, of course, I'm sure in all the countries, a lot of customer adoption, which corporates need to respond to. So that would be my story. And
right, wonderful. Yeah, now you mentioned about COVID, and I want to know, thank you for your very explanatory answer, Mr. Tito. But I'm moving on now to Alex, especially post-COVID. What are the challenges in your line of business, and how do you deal with obstacles and roadblocks, Alex?
Well, it's a challenge. It's interesting that you ask what is a roadblock. Well, COVID is a tragic event in humanity, which is revealing the ugly and hidden side. And also, we need a great level of collaboration to tackle this issue together, which is not working that fine at the moment. But in my business side, I won't say that this is a roadblock or obstacles, but I will say this is a tailwind. COVID is pushing a lot of things into digital space. So we eat, we order food digitally, we communicate digitally, and we trade digital assets. So during COVID pandemic situation, our business is having explosive growth. Now we are handling like more than $20 billion of trade a day on average. So our business has grown a lot. In a work perspective, I used to fly a lot, as you know. I used to spend like more than 50% of my time, in overseas country to meet my colleagues in other countries. But I'm locked down in Singapore for more than 1.5 years now, and I found it's working, and it's even better than before, because I can talk more frequent manner. I can just call them. We can just talk. We can open up Zoom call like this. If we didn't have a pandemic, we may not be able to think about this kind of gathering, right? So
that's actually correct.
Yeah, so pandemic is pushing a lot of things into digital space, and now I don't think we're gonna go back to the past. This digital thing will stick, and we know what is the benefit of being digitalized. So talk about communication and digital communication, and talk about contents and digital contents. We spend more time on YouTube and Netflix rather than going to Broadway to enjoy or to watch the movie theater, right? So this pandemic will make this digital asset business even bigger. And even though humanity with collaboration, great collaboration, even though we overcome this pandemic, we won't go to the past. This digital space will get even bigger and bigger. That's my thought.
Right. So while we are talking, how do you keep with the ever-changing demands of blockchain industry, especially that you are representing many line of business across ASEAN? I would like you to share your thoughts for those who wants to start a new business in blockchain industry. Alex.
Well, that is a tough question because we are operating in a lot of jurisdictions, and each jurisdiction have regulations on digital asset the businesses. Because if there's no regulation, we don't go there. So so we operate business only when there is proper regulation on digital space. So we need to the monitor what gonna be changed in the regulation because it's changing a lot. So if someone wanna do digital asset business in ASEAN, then I wanna give advice that you should understand your regulation, applicable regulations and the regulations coming in the future, and you should be transparent. Don't hide, no pain, no gain. Don't close door to the regulators. Don't try to run away. Well, some people may think that, okay, I can do more flexible way in more comfortable jurisdictions, perhaps, but I don't think it can go a long way. And if you want to build a serious business, you need to put effort on it. So you have to understand what regulation is existing in that jurisdiction. And even though there is no regulation, you should understand what is a concern of regulators or what is a concern of the market. Then you have to prepare in advance. If not, you will never be able to build a serious size of business. And to do this, the best way, I think, will be the transparency. If you're not sure, you can ask regulators. Open and transparent manner. If you're not sure, if you cannot make a collaboration with like key partners, including bank, just go to them, knock their door, ask them what is their concern. It may take time for them because this is a new thing, but if you approach in transparent manner, then of course you can build a collaboration which will benefit in your business in the future. So I want to say understanding of the regulation and transparency.
Thank you, Alex. Now I'm gonna move on to Pete as the president of Thailand Digital Asset Operators Trade Association, addressing the knowledge gap of the general public about blockchain. What is your from your expertise and maybe your plan ahead? What is the best approach to spread the knowledge and close the gap that we have, especially between the general public and us who are in the industry?
Well, I don't know if I have the answer about what is the best way, but I can tell you instead what is going on in Thailand. We're starting to see much more like mass adoption in at least in investing in digital assets, and the knowledge gap is huge. Like most people don't know what private keys are, public keys are. There's a lot of scammers. People are getting phished. So there's almost like an effort from every direction trying to educate the people. So for example, if an influencer has a lot of following, they will get questions all the time. What do I do? Somebody stole my crypto, and they feel obligated to sort of like, help their fan base. So they have started to create, presentations on their own about, what are the things you need to equip yourself with, or what knowledge do you need to equip yourself with in order to, before you invest in crypto. So influencers are doing that. The exchange is doing that too, because we don't want our, customers to lose their money. The regulators are very concerned about it, and they're putting up the SEC is putting up a course on crypto 101 as well. So I think it's something that it seems like in Thailand, at least, everyone is actually pushing out, is advocating for the general to know more about crypto. So I don't think I answered your question, but I think it's something I want to share that we'll see what the most efficient way is, but right now everyone is just doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. So blockchain and cryptocurrency is more like a movement rather than a technological side when we see it that way. So thank you for your question, Pete. So I'm going over to Steve. I'm gonna address a little bit about CBDCs. The central banks are working on CBDCs all over the globe. So I'm gonna know, what do you think will happen when it is deployed, especially in Australia?
Yeah, Australia's in a different position, I think, to many with respect to our financial services system. Our banking system is considered robust. I think it's fast, relatively speaking. We have the new payments platform. Real-time payments are not an issue generally for us. So there hasn't been as strong a push for retail CBDCs. And the Reserve Bank, their stated position is that there's not demand for that. So we're one removed for that, and the focus is primarily on wholesale CBDCs. And there's currently a trial taking place between the Reserve Bank, Consensus, National Australia Bank, Perpetual, and the Commonwealth Bank, where they're running through a trial in relation to this. So ours is a very measured approach. I think there's not quite the FOMO there is in a lot of other jurisdictions, notwithstanding the fact I think those who are in the industry love and like the idea, at least, that the retail CBDC is the direction, but there's not currently a huge appetite for that within government. So I think we're starting in a more conservative position, which won't surprise many people. And it is the continuing discussion around the wholesale thing. But we watch with interest what's happening in other jurisdictions, particularly out of the EU, and I think in jurisdictions like Canada, which often feels like they're moving in a similar way to us, that they're more advanced with respect to at least the signalling that says that a retail CBDC is on the horizon for them. So at this point in time, I would say we are doing things that look less interesting, but they're more functional from the perspective of the jurisdiction.
Interesting. I'm gonna touch for more DeFi and NFTs topics. I'm gonna go to Hock Lai. Can you please tell us about DeFi implementation in Singapore? How ready is the infrastructure in your country to get on in this new technology?
You're on mute, Hock Lai.
Thanks, Soham. I won't go into specific DeFi implementations in Singapore. However, I would like to draw to the fact that I think DeFi is still pretty much under the regulation of the Payment Services Act. In fact, if we refer to the latest consultation paper from the Financial Action Task Force, they specifically have items, and they are already giving guidance on DeFi. For those who intend to do DeFi projects, do comply to the regulation, and I think the regulator will update the relevant regulations to regulate it. In terms of technology, I think there's no limitation in terms of technology, but DeFi do have a higher risk in terms of the implementation of a smart contract, given that the thesis is really about automation through the use of smart contract. And if you do have flaws in the smart contract, you could have easily, that kind of flaw could have been easily exploited by other players. Yeah. So my view is very simple on this. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Hock Lai. Moving over again to Pete. So we're talking about the last one, NFTs. Whether participants here are updating on the current hype. Can you please describe about the current hype with NFT? What are your thoughts?
I think the current hype is actually, it's a bit hard to talk about it because it's easy to say, oh, it's overhyped, right? But at the same time, you could also say, well, BTC is overhyped. I think NFT has its root in I think you can find other iterations of digital collectibles. Let's say if you play World of Warcraft or Ragnarok, there are virtual items that have been sold for real money in there. So I think the value of something on an NFT is as convincing as the platform or the world, right? Or if you think about collectible cards, like or like Pokemon cards, anyone could take a picture of those cards or scan it and then print it out again, but it doesn't have value like real Pokemon cards, right? So the value of it depends not just on what's being tokenized, but also on the, let's call it the world that is tokenized, that the token is in, right? How convincing the platform is. So, and I think it's something that millennials are especially familiar with all the online games, and how much time they spend online as well. There's even, there's even Zoom applications where you have like characters running around now, and it's becoming very like widely adopted just so that people can sort of like have their cartoons running around in a virtual office and interacting with other people. So I think as we start to live more and more virtually, I think it's let's say it's an area that's actually very exciting. But would I pay as much as people on news pay for those art pieces? Probably not. That's my take on it.
Thank you, Pete. So I'm afraid we are running out of time, and we have reached the last question for and also for closing statement for the panelists. So from you, Pete, what should we expect from the blockchain industry in 2021?
Sorry, the question, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, what should we expect from the blockchain industry in 2021?
Oh, I think it's a hard question. I think more players are coming in, right? Like NFTs, for example, is drawing in a lot of artists, and I think DeFi is drawing in a lot of traditional banks and also garnering a lot of financial players. So I think we're going to see, let's say, more interest in the crypto space, more people trying to innovate new things, more adoption. And I don't think, I think it's a really exciting time, actually. That's what I think about it.
All right, thank you. So Steve, do you want to add what are your thoughts?
I think rather than what's going to happen, what can we make happen? I think we can make confidence be something we don't have to talk about quite as much. So I think incumbent on us coming together just to give confidence to those around us. So I think the opportunities will flow from that. That's something I would like to see the rest of the year reflect.
Thank you, Steve. How about you, Tito?
Tito, you're on mute.
Tito is on mute.
Yeah, I'm excited. Right. And I think the first area that I think we'll see real development is on the enterprise side, as opposed to the retail side, because clearly for enterprises, there's a clear benefit statement. They have the resources, they have the talent, they have the means to actually make it happen. But clearly there needs to be use cases that need to be presented to them rather than them having to create their own use cases because they're new to the space. And hopefully this type of collaboration and learnings and discussion that are happening between countries can be a source of success transfer, so that we can work together and develop together.
Thank you, Tito. I'm going now to Alex Kim. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
2021. I want to say to the moon, but to be the realistic, let me talk about three things. Somebody told me that it's always better to say three things first. So I think the first one should be compliance. To the introduction of travel rule and other FedEp recommendation, I think there will be more compliance obligation on VSPs, and there will be some distinction on treatment between regulated VSPs and unregulated VSPs for the public good, I believe. So the digital asset players, we may need to spend more time and effort on compliance side. I believe. And also in Upbit, we are the operating regulated businesses. So we are expecting to put a lot of effort on compliance. And secondly, I would say convergence. We are seeing like a lot of discussion over the Zoom call, between BASPs, cross-border, or between digital asset players and traditionals, and also finance and other logistics, so manufacturing companies, how to harness this blockchain technology to make their business better. So thanks to Zoom, thanks to the pandemic, since we cannot fly, we have a lot of Zoom calls between different sectors. I think this is really helping a lot to expand this digital asset space in a healthier way to actually innovate real economy. So convergence will be the keyword number 2. And the third thing should be collaboration. Since digital asset business is borderless, we need a lot of collaboration with regulators, other VASPs, other FIs, including banks and securities companies, and other businesses as well to harness this the new technology in better way. So to recap, I would say this year compliance, convergence, and collaboration should be the keyword, in my understanding.
Got it. Thank you, Alex. Now for the last one, Hock Lai, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, my answer is the same every year. Every year we are one step closer to mainstream adoption of blockchain. Perhaps this year could be different. I think all the initial use cases of blockchain adoption largely rest in the financial services realm. I think NFT becomes a game changer for the art industry. So I think this year we could see a few other industries that have very breakthrough use cases on blockchain, and that will, I think, bring us even closer to mainstream adoption and belief in the transformative power of blockchain. Thanks.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. So we have reached the end of the second panel. I'm gonna say thank you to all of the panelists. I'm gonna give it back to the MC. I'm Oham Bugio signing out. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Oham. Back to me again. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of today's program. Thank you for taking time off your busy schedule to join us this MOU signing ceremony and the exciting panel discussions. We wish you a pleasant day and an enjoyable week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Hope to see you guys all after the pandemic.
Yeah, in real life.
Yeah.